Hi, everybody. Hi, Colleen.
Hello.
It is that time of year again. We are about to start with our next step, opening and registration and all of that. So every year we do a podcast, and that is what we're here to do today. One of the things to know, though, is that while we talk about these classes, um, I would say it's not so direct of like, here's what you can find in each modules. We talk more about the kind of philosophical aspects of these classes, like why we started them, why we were called to start them. And I don't know, you learn stuff. We talk about the free things that we do too. So we are just excited to be here for this episode.
Why they make a difference.
Why they make a difference.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
How they help you, what you want to know.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah. It's when we're recording this at the end of September. So I forget what date it's actually being released, but we're recording this at the end of September. So for October's theme on the Distance Reiki Share, which if you don't already join that, that is 9:30 a.m. Pacific times every single Tuesday. But we're talking a lot about a lot of spiritual topics and kind of those words that you might hear um, in the spiritual communities. And so that really came through because we realized that, you know, even if you're not new to Reiki, but especially if you are new to Reiki, you can hear all these terms and wonder what they mean and all of these kinds of things. And because we did talk about in August about Reiki and shamanism, so many of them have a root in those kinds of practices, although they can be outside of those practices. So we're going to be talking about cord cutting, ancestral work, spirit release, like all of these kinds of different things that you might hear in the spiritual nomenclature. And so that directly also ties into these classes, whether it's Next Step Reiki or whether it's Explore the 12 Heavens. They're kind of connected to each other in a way because one of the things that we do in those classes is we learn about those things on a different to a different level. So how does Reiki do those kinds of techniques, where we even learned them, and how we use them in our Reiki sessions, how that helps us in our own personal lives, and the different ways that those techniques have taught us to channel things out loud, to go into like our invocations, our guided journeys, session styles that we do. So anyway, I'm really excited for that month. We have been kind of talking about all the different subjects that we'll be talking about.
spiritual buzzwords.
Yeah, spiritual buzzwords. So
That's what we call because we have series now that we're doing. So every month in the Distance Reiki Share, we do a series of a topic. And so this particular series is spiritual buzzwords. And so all the different things that we talk about there are the things that we also teach. So understanding, like Robin said, what is cord cutting? What do we mean by ancestral histories or soul history or past lives? How do we find out what they are? Communicating with spirit guides, what does that mean? All these, thought form unraveling. I don't know if we have that one on the list, but
I
all
think we
these
do.
different things.
Yeah, somewhere
Yeah.
in there. Well,
Also, we just did the September topic. So we did shamanism as a series, Reiki and shamanism as a series. Then this last month we did um, the next series was on intuition, psychic abilities, telepathy, and understanding what those are and how Reiki does those. So, anyway,
so let's go ahead and get into this in a little more linear way. Let's go ahead and start with the backstory of how these classes started. And just to line that out is, we're going to start with how this intertwines with the backstory of shamanism, and then, how it came to be with like Holy Fire Reiki and how Reiki does these techniques, and then where these classes started and how they've kind of evolved over the years with it. And then we'll go from there.
Great.
So, Colleen, that would be you. Let's just give, I know a lot of people have heard this story, but also um, we have a lot of new people. So they may not have heard this story. So let's just give a quick backstory about the shamanic place that this started and where we went from there.
Okay. All right. So back in 1997, my hairstylist suggested that I had a soul retrieval, which is a shamanic technique. And I had the soul retrieval. It was profoundly life-changing. And Jan Engelsmith, who became my teacher, then started teaching shamanic classes at the same time. And so I was like, yes. And now I know how fortunate I was that she lived in this area near Portland, Oregon, and that I was able to take the classes. So, with a deep dive into shamanic training and also, um, you know, all of the ceremonies that went with it, the teachings of it that went with it, it was a very intensive training. About 3 years after that was when my horse went lame and told me that he ended up going lame to deliver me to my power to heal, and showed me putting my hands on him to give him Reiki. And um, I ended up, after some months of procrastination, ended up getting my Reiki attunements. And that was then the next level of life-changing um, possibilities, I would say. Um, and what I know now that I didn't know then was that I was looking for something that led me to my own spiritual inner truth, like what it all meant to me, what I believed, what I wanted to know. And then now, what I also know is that the ability to expand my perceptions into both an expanded reality of the world around me in the physical world, but also to be able to connect with the unseen spiritual dimensions. And those were in both shamanism and then in Reiki. So Reiki energy does that. And because I had been in shamanic training and continued in the shamanic training, but I immediately really resonated with Reiki energy. So I always used Reiki energy in the shamanic work that I was doing. I also, Jan, my teacher, um, actually asked me to focus on Reiki and to teach Reiki as a shamanic practice. So then 3 years into that, so now I'm in 6 years of this training. That's when I met William Rand and took some of his classes and really found like the first level of professional Reiki training that I could find. And that mattered to me because I knew I wanted to be professional. By this point, I was all in. Like, I'm going to do this. Now I need to sell my other business and do this full time. And so I really wanted some great training. So that's when I became a licensed teacher for the International Center for Reiki Training. And now I'm going to really fast forward through
That's
the
good.
years. I also received a doctorate in shamanic studies, so the two were always going together. Then, Robyn, I think around 2015 is when you joined Reiki Lifestyle.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Mhm.
So, Robyn joined Reiki Lifestyle right at the time that Holy Fire Reiki was developed by William Rand. Myself, I was always a part of that too. Robyn became part of that. And together, then we started working with Reiki Lifestyle. And it was very apparent to me that the Holy Fire Reiki was actually doing the same level of healing, soul level healing, as the shamanic techniques that I was using. And so in all of my sessions, and by this time I had done probably 3,500 to 5,000 sessions, so a lot over 15, 16 years. And so it became apparent to me that I needed to really understand how Reiki energy was doing the same thing that I had been doing with the shamanic techniques. And so I really came to understand that it was just another method of accessing the spiritual realm, spiritual guides. It was a different energy than some of the shamanic energies that I was working with. And I really knew I wanted to get good at it. And so focused my full attention on what is this energy? How does Reiki do the same kind of soul level healing that I had learned with my shamanic techniques? Like I say, they were always merged. So when I say it like that, it wasn't an either or, they were always merged. It just became a primary focus. Also, at that time, Robyn said to me in some sessions we were doing um, that she wanted to know how I did sessions the way that I do them, that combine shamanic Reiki, but Reiki using the kind of shamanic influences. And also because in those sessions, we, the way I do my sessions is with Reiki journeys. So journeying with Reiki energy to observe what's actually happening in the session. Like what's happening, where is the healing taking place for the person at, again, that soul level. Sometimes it's more of a, like real world. When I say soul level, it can go both into the depth of the soul injuries, but it also can go into like the surface injuries or the immediate or maybe even something small at the time. So when she asked that, that's kind of when I think the energy itself directed us to create the Next Step Reiki classes. And so we have been teaching Next Step Reiki classes since what, 2017, 18, something like
Somewhere in
that.
there. Yeah.
We've been teaching them for 3 years before the pandemic. So because we did some in person and then moved them online so we could reach more people. Anyway, the courses actually started to teach us how to teach them, how to teach people to be able to use Reiki energy, to do Reiki journeys, to observe what Reiki is doing, to access higher levels of consciousness, both for personal life, daily life, on the fly, in sessions, for self, all of the above. And every month we started off first with 6-month courses, and then we realized, oh, this isn't enough. Um, it's not going as deep as we know it can go and what people are looking for. And so then we moved them into 1-year classes. And now the next step classes is actually a 3-year program. So there's a level 1, a level 2, and a level 3. So in level 1, we're learning that journey technique. And so much of it is what we already are capable of, but we've forgotten how and not remembering how. And what are the skills you can learn? Because when you're using Reiki energy, one of the first things that we noticed is people were having intuitive impressions, psychic experiences, telepathic experiences in the sessions, but there was no training for it. how to do it, how to be consistent, how to know what you're doing, and then what do you do with what you're observing. So Reiki is always doing the work. So it's not dependent, Reiki healing is not dependent on being able to observe what it's doing. However, this adds an additional element to the Reiki energy, to your sessions, when you are able to observe what's actually happening for the person. And the experiences are so extraordinary. They also are, they completely expand your belief system and the depth of your spiritual knowledge. So anyway, we did the Reiki journey techniques for the first year. The second year of it is going into advanced healing techniques. So then it showed us, people as practitioners, for instance, and you don't have to be a practitioner to do these classes. They're personal and professional, and each person will know what that is for themselves. But the second level of classes is, how do you apply the healing techniques that you learn in level 1? So, for instance, in a journey, you may have the intention, or it may show up that you are doing ancestral healing, or maybe you're doing past life healing, or maybe there's a healing element about, when I say money, I mean that can be all kinds of belief systems around it. Sometimes the healing things show up as, what is your soul's purpose? What is your life purpose? And so level 2 is teaching you how to use Reiki journeys around kind of subjects like that, but it's way more expanded than just that list that we just gave you. And then level 3 goes into the third year, goes into how do you channel it? And channeling is a way bigger topic than just speaking it out loud. And this is different than, say, oh, maybe you're familiar with Bashar. So where Bashar actually embodies, the man actually embodies Bashar, and Bashar is the one speaking through him. This is different than this. This is how to channel out loud what's happening in the Reiki journey, how to observe it, and then how to channel it out loud. But in addition, all of these skills apply to your daily life. So how do you move into that depth of consciousness on the fly? What about when you're in your personal life, in a relationship, in a deep conversation that you need to have or want to have, and you want to apply that ability to channel? Or if you are innovating, for instance, like all of this, Robyn and I channel all of it. We do invocations, we do journeys together, and then we do channeling. And we also utilize another skill that we teach throughout all of it, automatic writing. And so the automatic writing also gives you that avenue. So anyway, I veered off from my history.
That's okay.
So anyway,
No, because it's all a part of it. But I was just laughing when you were talking about how the next step courses, or all of these courses, because Explore the 12 Heavens is the same. They're different kinds of courses. I'll get into that in a minute. But I was just laughing because they did create themselves. And that is a part of what learning these skills do. And that was a huge piece for me because, as you said, where it started was, I want to do sessions in the same style as you do, which, if you have been with us a while, if you haven't, we do have 2 examples of how we do sessions on our YouTube or podcast. You can just, I don't remember what the titles exactly are. I should have probably had them prepared. Um, but it's really where you're giving Reiki, whether you're in person or at a distance, where you're giving Reiki and you're channeling out loud what is being observed in the thing, which you talked about. But if you want an example of that, then that's on that's on the YouTuber podcast. You can just go back and listen to those. But it's funny because like that is where it started. And growing up in these ways, like, I had my first soul retrieval at like 11. So I'm used to like those kinds of techniques. Being a left brain person, I always thought like, oh gosh, that's not available to me. And then realizing through coming on with Colleen and working with her, like, oh, these are all just skills. They're all things that you can learn how to do. But where that also extrapolates to is different parts of your life. So, how do you listen to Reiki on kind of a continual basis for yourself, for others, for your family? I use it a lot for that, for how I navigate my life. But I'm still chuckling because when these courses were writing themselves, and it's also how we did the animal Reiki. But I level 1 wrote itself relatively easy. I mean, we had to move things around, but we knew we wanted to teach people how to journey with Reiki. And you really have to get a foundation of that before you start learning the advanced healing techniques for others, which is what, like you said, we do in level 2. So you need to have a really strong like journey foundation, which is why we basically spend the whole year learning how to do that for ourselves. We do a little bit of an introduction to journey for somebody else. But that's why we spend the whole day and whole year, and we do it on different topics, whether it's your intuition, whether it's your clairsenses, whether that is your soul's purpose, whether that is how to use it in your practical daily life. But then when we got to level 2, it was so funny because this is where Colleen and I work really well together in our different styles because I'm more left brained, she's more right brained. And that's, I think, why the training is good for all different styles of personalities, thinkers, clairsenses, all of those kinds of things, because the both of us bring our own ways of doing things with it, right? So, she's going to channel at the beginning of class and it's a little more circular. And then I go into a PowerPoint where it's a little more linear. Then we go into the journey techniques where it could go, wherever you go in your own personal style. And when we get to level 2, we have all of these different techniques that we learn. We have ancestral history, we have past life history, we have thought form unraveling. How do these techniques work? How does Reiki do these techniques? And then how do you do them for others? How do you add them, whether you're professional or not? How do you do them for others? And for the longest time, Colleen would do this in her sessions. And we kind of wrote an invocation that covers the whole thing in a very general way. But then I kept saying, no, Colleen, this is a technique. And she was like, I don't understand like what you mean. I'm like, this is a technique. This style is showing us that this is a technique that can be duplicated. Like other people can learn how to do this technique. We can write basically a manual, which you get in level 2. It's a short manual, but it's basically a manual that you get in level 2 on how to do this technique. And so it was because the same kind of thing happened in animal Reiki. Like that was one of the things that, and if you take those classes with us, like that when Pam and I came onto the team of Sue and Colleen, that was one of the places that was part of my role as I know now. And this is something that is a part of, my gifts and talents of being able to take all of this kind of information that's out here and channeling it into like that manual style, that booklet style, and that anchor of that foundation of how it can be translated into like here is a technique. So
A
we would
structure,
kind of
a structure.
a structure, thank you. Yeah, a structure. That's a better word for it. A structure. And because she's good at that too, but it was like that was also a part of our journey with animal Reiki. And so I noticed kind of this pattern over time of like even taking each individual module and giving it a structure within a PowerPoint into something that could be duplicated. And that's why we work well together, because she has that right, like, unlimited possibilities and bringing in the information, and then, like, I can bring it in from kind of a different way and give structure to it. And so it was always so funny because we really, like, I'm like, "No, it's a technique, like, we can put it into," and then there was at some point she goes, "Oh, it's a technique." Like, she kinda knew that, but, like, to be able to put it into this, like, replicate that's not a word, I don't know how to replicate it. I'm sure there's a word in there
You're
somewhere that
talking about the spirit reveal technique,
yeah, the
right?
spirit reveal technique and, like,
Yeah.
how to replicate it in an actual, like, manual type form. And so that is what you learn in level 2 is all of these advanced healing techniques. How that came to be is that through Reiki, we do what is called the spirit reveal technique. And the spirit reveal technique is this combination of Reiki and shamanic techniques and all of the different techniques, because some of them have come in from other places over the combined almost like 40 years of experience that you and I have with not just your shamanic training, but all of the different kinds of training that both of us have received in the different ways, and brought it into this technique that you learn about how Reiki does all of this skill development, how Reiki does all of this healing work. And so the other cool thing about it is that because each one, and especially in module 2, we do a journey for self, and then we do a or in level 2, we do a journey for self, and then we do a journey for other people. And we just had somebody say this, like I think it was last month or maybe the month before. They're like, "Gosh, every month is like a personal deep healing session for self." So you do one for yourself, and then you receive one from somebody because you do partner work. And so every month you're doing thought form unraveling for yourself, you're doing ancestral work for yourself, all of these different techniques that we learn through Reiki energy, which has its own unique lens on how it does this work. And so you're also a different person by the end of the 3 years because you've done such deep level of healing work over the course of 3 years. So you're learning these skills, you're doing healing work. And then also, one of the biggest things that we really shift in this work is the level of empowerment work. So, like, because that's something that Reiki energy does naturally is that level of empowerment work. So, anyways, I was just kind of laughing to myself as you were talking about that because it's a tech work that time frame of really listening to the energy, because that's what these skills also do. That's also how we wrote the animal Reiki manuals, is these same skills, going into Reiki journeys, really listening to the energy, listening to our animal Reiki guides, our other spirit guides, listening to those, listening to the energy and developing it from that perspective. And this wasn't any different. And Explore the 12 Heavens wasn't any different. We we created these from the energy telling us how to do that, because that is another place that so many people ask about or have a calling to, whether or not they are even their own, even if they're just doing it for self. Like, how does Reiki energy guide us in all of these different facets? And how do you listen to the energy? How do you hear the energy, which is also your inner truth, which is also your, inner key, right? Telling you, guiding you. How do you listen to all of that in the ways that you're creating your life, or if you are called to be a practitioner, your practice, your business, all of these kinds of things. And and these courses were no different. We've listened, and even still, we'll get into a module. We always say that we will shift a module here and there. We might change the order of them, or we realize that something else is coming in that we need to teach. And so, for the most part, they're pretty set in their structure, but we are still constantly listening to the energy around each course, around each level, around each month. And when something needs to shift and evolve or grow, we listen to the energy. It guides us the whole way through, and it guided us in creating this, and it guided both of us in creating the technique that other people can learn and a structure around it.
Well, I think I'll add a little bit to that because where that came from, going even back to 2015, when I started working with the Holy Fire energy, and this isn't exclusive to Holy Fire, but that's what brought the shift in for me. So, what I noticed is that Reiki was doing soul retrieval differently than how I had been trained in soul retrieval. And when Holy Fire came in, so many people kept saying, "This is soul retrieval." And because I had had such early training with it, really almost in the newness of its development, from Sandra Ingerman and then through my teacher Jan, that I knew what we were doing was different. And so what I kept doing in the session, like we say, the same way that we've created everything, is I would be in a session and I would tell the energy, like, show me how you're doing what you're doing. Show me what Reiki is doing for this work. And then that's when it came through in the spirit reveal technique.
Colleen,
The
can I just interject real quick? When you say
Sure.
show me what you're doing, can you add in some of the techniques that were showing up that you asked Reiki to kind of show you its version of it?
Oh, like the how to.
Not just the how to, but like cord cutting versus cord healing as an example when you were in those places with Reiki energy and those journeys.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Get more specific about the
Just a
what you're
little bit, just a
doing.
couple examples.
Okay. So first of all, when I say show me, it's the awareness that Reiki is conscious. Reiki energy itself is conscious. And it activates the same consciousness within our bodies. And it activates our higher thought and levels of consciousness. And it entrains us to those higher thoughts. So in the session, I would activate, for instance, well, all of the symbols, but very specifically the distance symbol, and really working with that heart to heart. That's where that distance symbol is like that bridge of light, heart to heart, and it goes beyond time and space. So working with that, it could take me into a person's, like at the soul level, what was going on for them, whether it showed me something that had happened in this lifetime that needed healing, or whether it was another lifetime or an ancestral history or a soul's history. Like sometimes it can show things that are not about being human or being on the earth. And so um, it would show me things like, oh, this is an injury that happened in childhood. Now, I may not know exactly what that injury was, but I get what the result of the injury is. Like it's a block, it's an injury that has limited or harmed a person. So I'm going to take imagination because that is one that, believe it or not, is like almost everybody needs some type of work done with their imagination. So in the session, I might notice that something has happened to their authentic intellect, like their ability to perceive their own, um, intuition, imagination. And then what the journey will do is take me to the origination of that. Sometimes it might be in this lifetime, what we call our culturally created self. The injury may show up as something that happened in childhood from family members, peers, generations. It could just be a collective belief system. We definitely see it in generational healing. What is some of the things that I had, thought forms I grew up with, would be different than children born today, for instance, but they can still be linked. The same thing with the ancestral healing. many times something like that, or say a vow of poverty and the person struggles with money in this lifetime, or the inability to use their voice because of something that happened either in their ancestral lineage or even in a past life. So it started to show different things that, could have caused an injury. And the very big difference between the soul reveal technique and this uh, or spirit reveal technique and the soul retrieval technique is, in the soul retrieval technique, what happens is those injuries will cause a fragmentation of the soul, and parts of the soul will get lost and go into another dimension. And the shaman actually has spirit guides that will go find that part and bring it back to the person and blow it in to return them to their wholeness. Psychology, that's called dissociation. How do you get people back? So, what this was showing, though, was a different kind of the way that the energy worked. They all work, so it's not a better than. It's just showing me how the Reiki energy was doing the work. So, what it showed is those same injuries were represented by layers. And these layers would cover the person so in those injuries, there was a forgetting of who they truly are, like, forgetting your ability, going back to imagination or intuition or insight or psychic abilities or any of those things, intellect, that the injury would show up as a layer, something that was covering the wholeness that was actually inside, ready to be revealed. And that even had an epigenetic component to it. Like I could observe, and the way I observe, when I say observe, it's all metaphorical. So it's not exactly, but the way the epigenetics would show up is the Reiki energy would come in and reveal their gifts and talents. So let's say it was a past life injury, and let's say it had to do with imagination or it had to do with voice, perhaps there, or like even going back to a vow of poverty in another lifetime, or a fear of speaking out because of another lifetime, or a fear of being able to do this kind of work because of other lifetimes or ancestral histories, because what we see is many of us called to these practices today had persecution in other lifetimes or in our ancestral history, or perhaps we just have like the knowingness of like, oh man, stay away from that stuff, or even in this lifetime where things um, can block you from this lifetime because of a fear of persecution, fear of being seen, fear of being weird, like now the things that I say, boy, I was really uncomfortable saying them 20 years ago. And now it's like I have a little bit more discernment about where I say what I say, but I'm comfortable saying it now, like talking to fairies or talking to trees, things like that. So anyway, what would happen is the way Reiki would come in, I would observe how it was going to release and heal the layers that were hiding the wholeness. And so the Reiki energy would come in and and fill the person with so much light. And it does this whether you're observing it or not. So if you are a Reiki practitioner, it's already doing this. So the Reiki energy would come in and fill the person with light, and the light still works this way today. The light fills the person and surrounds those layers and illuminates them into the light. And through that process, dissolves the cords and connectors and any attachments to the person. And that can be from any time in the soul's history. And so, what then happens as those layers are released, the cords are released, the attachments, blocks, intrusions, limitations, resistances, abuse, trauma, all those things getting released from a person. And then what would happen is the truth of who they are through the epigenetics. Their cells wake up, their genetics wake up with their gifts and their talents from this lifetime, other lifetimes, ancestral histories. And one of the big past life ones that came in, and this also then applies to ancestral history, applies to everything, is that, we also have lifetimes of mastery. We also have lifetimes of what we call ordinary peace and contentment, that those can show up in the session, wake up in the cellular memory and your own perceptions of yourself. So that's why it's called the spirit reveal. It actually reveals your spirit to you so that you perceive your world from a different way of seeing yourself and also the world around you. Did that kind of
Mhm.
talk about it?
Yep. Yeah. So, I don't know if you want to keep going with that, Colleen, because you were in the midst of Holy Fire showing you how it's doing its healing work, which was similar to soul retrieval.
Yes. So I had, to be honest with everybody, I had a lot of resistance with this change. I had done, like I say, probably 3,500 to 5,000 sessions of soul retrievals using the Reiki lineage I had been working with, Usui Tibetan Reiki, Karuna Reiki, and then all of my shamanic work. And so I really developed certain ways, structures of doing things in my sessions. And they were teachable because I was also teaching them in shamanism as well as in Reiki. But Reiki didn't really have a pathway for this kind of training. A lot of it, when I started with Reiki in 2000, it was like you really weren't even supposed to do anything about the idea that you were getting psychic impressions. So as this started to teach me how it was coming in differently, I really realized I liked the way the Reiki energy did the work more than some of the previous energies I had worked with. Again, that's not true for everybody. That just was true for me. So, in those layers being released, for instance, one of the really powerful things was the understanding of Reiki actually heals the injuries as they're being removed from a person. And it does it with the power of love and the authority of compassion. So, it's definite that these injuries get to be released because one of the most important energies with Reiki is that it wakes up your own personal sovereignty. And these layers, these injuries, really have no right to have any power over you. So as Reiki releases them, they carry what those injuries are, those layers, just a euphemism for what's being released. So layers that hide you from your own view get released, and they're actually healed back to their original cause. Because a lot of times, something that has happened to you or something that you have created that is now unwanted, old patterns, etc., those actually get healed all the way back because most of the time they have somewhere they originated, again, possibly in an ancestral history or the culturally created self that can also include generational healing. And of course, now what we're seeing is really the truth that I think we are changing the age in humanity. And so many of us are here on a soul level to establish some stability in these practices, and what we always talk about is that we believe we are changing from the age of the outside authority to the age of the inner authority, meaning that these kinds of practices, this ability to access your consciousness at new levels, to perceive spiritual realms, whether those are sacred geometry or universal realms or earth realms or dimensions or biofields, however you define them, Reiki gives you a deeper access to that part of your consciousness and your ability to perceive with it, and then to bring it into your higher mind and your higher thought, bringing it into your daily life and benefiting you. So as it started to show, and then as we were teaching it, realizing these are skills that people want, and yet they are hard to find training for them, particularly with Reiki. There are still many lineages who actually would not necessarily approve of these kinds of practices. And in those lineages, they may be much more strict, and Reiki is practiced in a very formal, standardized way every single session. It all works. It's all good. It's just a matter of if, for me, and seeing what was happening with students, they're naturally already starting to have intuitive experiences during a Reiki session. So then the question came, well, if we are going to teach this, what do people need to know? What do they want to know? What needs to heal for them to know it? And how are the techniques that we're teaching something they can repeat and they can use and even teach? So intuitive impressions, for instance, how do you gain skill and how do you know how that works for you? Probably the number one question. How do I know I'm not making this up? And then the next thing that happens is people do not have a good sense of how their intuition works for them. So we do deep dives into what we call the clairsenses, because some people see when we say observe what Reiki's doing in a Reiki journey, it doesn't mean that they are um, seeing it. Observing it can be changed to perceiving it. So you can perceive it through thinking it, clair intellect, or clair, oh gosh, all the clairs are going out of my mind. But you know, your ability to hear your intuition.
Audience.
Yeah, or feel your intuition, or you just know your intuition. And how do you develop that and get better at it and understand it? And then the other thing that we see is that you'll have one kind of primary clairsense, but then other clairsenses start to come in. So how do you understand it? How do you get skilled at it? How are you appropriate and ethical with it? What are the ethics? What are the benefits? How does it help the people you're working with? How does it help you as a practitioner? And so all of these things started to come in. And both Robyn and I care deeply about contributing to wellness in the world. And this has given us a way to do that we can make a difference, because this is something that, again, thinking of this change of the age and how very tumultuous it is today, past 5 years have been just amazingly unprecedented, almost every day. And so how do we use these skills in a way that makes a difference? And that motivates us to teach it. That is a big piece of it. We see the changes that it makes and the results people have from it, again, on a personal level. And then also for those who want to be practitioners, takes you to a new level of being a practitioner. These can all be learned from a very beginning level of Reiki. So you can have Reiki level 2, be brand new in Reiki, and you can still learn these. If you have advanced experience with Reiki, the advanced level is just going to take you on your path, your way, that you probably already know a little bit more about. And then that's the next thing that it did, was it really brought in the awareness of how Reiki energy teaches us how to do things our own, like our way. That your way, your beliefs, your truth are as true as anyone else's. And here's the next piece that it leads to: your own inner authority, and you are tapped into your inner knowing. So then it brings it into, going back to the classes. So we started off with these classes and we were listening. What do people need? What do they want to know? How can we help? And so we did what we're teaching how to do, to listen, to listen first of all to what are the questions, and then next, so what are some of the solutions to the questions? What are some of the answers to the questions? And then, as Robyn said, put it into a structure. And so we started with the next step classes, and then we became aware, and I don't remember quite when the Explore the 12 Heavens class came in, because it's a little bit different in the way it is more about your own personal development. And then as you go through that personal development and you journey for yourself every week or every month, and you explore a new level of the heavens, which are levels of consciousness, you will perceive them your way. When we call them a heaven, like for me, I feel like there is like a divine realm aspect to it, but other people absolutely access them through like a universal perspective, or perhaps even a galactic perspective. They can be perceived from a earth and biofield perspective. And so what we've realized is that as people are going through the training in the 12 Heavens class, a couple more things are happening that we didn't know when we started, but we just listened and let it show us what it wanted to do, was to understand, first of all, those levels of consciousness are a part of us. They're what we're made of, and we have all of those levels within us. Meaning, like, when you get to the third heaven, for instance, well, let me talk about the first heaven. The first heaven is the earth, and we're in our ordinary consciousness, which we have high consciousness here too. So it's not like, oh, you have to go somewhere else to get there, because we have it here as well. But then you can use, again, the distance symbol, and the distance symbol is a bridge of light. And in shamanism, we learn to travel into shamanic realms, like going down through a tree root, or going up, lifting up into the upper world. What we do with this is we use that bridge of light that the distance symbol creates, and we actually cross over it into these next levels of heavens. And the third heaven is actually the first enlightened realm. So on the earth, we have the earth is a dual realm: first heaven, dual realm; second heaven, dual realm, but it's spiritual, it's non-physical. Third heaven is actually a non-dual realm. There's only higher frequencies, there's only love, and then everything after that just keeps going. So we explore those, and through that exploration, realizing that all of those qualities are already within us, back to epigenetics, the Reiki energy activates it within us, and we begin to remember it. And we begin to have access to ourselves at those deeper levels, that soul's knowledge or spirit's knowledge, and then actually be able to perceive yourself that way. So it did that. But the other thing that we've really noticed is in those realms, they now know, when I say they, the spiritual beings that are there, or whatever that looks like, in those realms, now know that we are actively accessing them. We are actively intending to reach these higher levels of consciousness, to wake them up within, to entrain with them. And then they started showing up in the sessions. Like, oh, finding out that people come in from different influences of like remembering of those soul level, that soul level knowledge. Like, maybe somebody's from the fifth heaven at their soul level. Sometimes they're even, sometimes in that 11th heaven soul level. That's when sometimes people have what we call earth adjustment disorder. Like, whoa, my soul just came out of these really higher levels and now I'm on earth. Like, what? We call those star seeds. So, anyway, so then what we found is that not only are we accessing those levels through the 12 heavens and exploring them, they're waking up questions within us that now those levels of consciousness are able to answer. So we're actually, through intention, indicating that we are moving into these higher levels. And as we see this evolution moving into this age of the inner truth, moving out of that outside authority telling us what to believe, what we have to believe, these are the rules, and into a form that teaches us our own beliefs, our perception of our truth, and then having a greater understanding. That may be from a religious standpoint, if a person has a religious practice in particular of any kind. It can take you deeper and deeper into the spiritual, knowledge of that religion. It can take you, both classes do this, but it can take you deeper into um, your the beloved spiritual beings of those traditions. For those that have a very earth-based belief system, nature-based, science, biology, the physical world, it can expand your awareness of this reality and the higher frequencies, because all those 12 heavens, the earth is made of them too. And we can actually lift our consciousness to the world around us into these higher levels. So back to when we created the courses, we just, to be honest, are so compelled. It's like, I can't tell you how much inner fulfillment and joy that it gives us to be able to share this information and to teach it so other people can start to grow with this awareness, get back to our authentic intellect, establish the freedom to pursue our own inner truth from all the different perspectives possible. And then 2020 came, and that's when we started the Distance Reiki Share and realized how important community is. And so the Distance Reiki Share, we started to gather on Zoom and doing online. And now we can gather, and we have been gathering for 5.5 years since 2020 for the Distance Reiki Share. And that has evolved because originally that was to just be together and be community the way that we could. And we knew how to use Zoom, and we were instrumental in developing online Reiki and the traditions of it, the practices of it with William Rand, because we had experience with our next step classes and knew how the online system worked. So we started it with all of our classes, all our Reiki 1 and 2, Master, Karuna, Animal Reiki, all of them, moving them all to online, and then discovering the frequencies of the biofields, the electromagnetic fields as another part of the earth elements and how to activate within them. And then the Distance Reiki Share, how to grow community, be together, and contribute to wellness this way. And so over time, our Distance Reiki Share has now evolved to where we do this same process to develop a new series of Reiki training skills, Reiki skills that we share every week. We do some type of an invocation or journey that is a personal healing experience for those listening. And then we do breakout rooms where people share Reiki with each other. And in that, we have been just deep diving into different Reiki subjects. And those are free, by the way. So, any of you that just want more practice, more community, more ways of looking at some of these things, learning about Reiki, you can join our Distance Reiki Share. If you can't be there live, we record them and they're on our YouTube and podcast channels under Reiki Lifestyle, and they're posted every Thursday. So it led us to those and then led us to this and how we can possibly share this information because we believe so deeply in the benefit of Reiki energy for daily life. So through all of the different classes that we teach, this is what's at the heart of it. Our heart intention is to be community with the people around the world, contribute to wellness through intention, through gathering, through teaching and using Reiki energy for it. What we came to realize this year is that we hadn't been clear enough that our next step in 12 Heavens classes and all of the different things that we do in our Distance Reiki Share are a combination of Reiki and shamanism. And going back to, I spent over like 25 years in my shamanic community until Jan retired and teaching it and sharing in it. Robyn grew up with it. We've worked together with it all these years. And so we became aware that we weren't clear enough about that because so many people would say, well, I want to do shamanic training. And I would think, well, that's what our next step classes are, just a
Even
different
people,
style.
well, that's what you're doing. Like,
Yeah,
oh,
it's like
we haven't said that.
we haven't said it. We weren't clear about it
Yeah.
because it's different. So, for instance,
Techniques are different.
some really great teachers teach what we would call shamanic Reiki.
Hmm.
Well, this is Reiki combined with shamanism.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's a little bit different flavor because we are working with the Reiki energy and the influences of the techniques that we learned in shamanism, but how Reiki does that same technique all the way back to the sessions where it go, show me how you do this.
Yeah. Well, it's different because you're just, there's a lot of different styles of cooking, right? You're getting to the
Right.
same place, but, somebody might do French style, somebody might do Italian style cooking. So that's really like the difference. We're using Reiki energy to do all of those techniques. So, that And we kind of realized like we don't say that enough. You're learning how to do cord cutting. You're not learning soul retrieval, but you are learning a parallel style of healing. It's a parallel style. It's not that either, but it's not soul retrieval. And the reason that we have to be so clear about that is because we're so well trained in it. We always want to make sure that we honor that while this is doing similar work, it is not that. And we want to make sure that we're clear about that. But over the years, it kind of got to be like this point of like, well, we're not doing soul retrieval, but then we realized like, but this is having the same end result. That's Italian cooking, we're doing French cooking. I mean, it's a parallel technique. But we also really honor that is its own training, its own style, all of those kinds of things. And then we realize like, oh yeah, but we also need to make sure we're clearer about that aspect. We're not using drums. You can use drums in combination with this. We're not using drumming to do the journeying, but we are getting to those enlightened realms through Reiki energy. So you learn how to do a journey. You learn how to journey into the enlightened realms, but you use a different technique in how to do it. Again, you're making a dish, you're making the end result, but you are using different techniques to do that. So that's where this year we really, really realized, and really too, as Colleen said, highly trained in both. And so we really realized like, oh, we're not saying that enough. So, and there's a lot more to that we could continue to go down. We did talk a lot about that in August. We're also working on the blogs that go with that subject right now. This is September. They start this week, right, Colleen? The blogs?
Yes.
Yeah. So we're also working on the blogs that also correspond with that whole topic. We're going to be talking about the techniques in October as well. So that, like the cord cutting, all of those kinds of things that are a part of those techniques that we are using parallel. And again, Reiki showed how to do it. It wasn't like, we're going to figure out how to do this differently. As Colleen said, she had resistance to doing it differently. It was compelling. It showed us how to do it. We're continually listening to the energy around all of those things. So, because we're kind of coming to time with this, Colleen, is there anything else? Because I want to kind of,
Wow, that went really fast.
yeah. Is there anything around that you want to add? Because I'm gonna go into a few other things before we
I
finish up.
do want to clarify one thing is that you can also use Reiki energy if you are doing it in an actual soul retrieval.
Yeah,
So I used Reiki energy for all my shamanic techniques. Now, again, as Robyn said, you have to be really honoring of the traditions that you're working within. The training that I had in shamanism honored Reiki energy. Some trainings in shamanism do not want you to bring in other kinds of energies. They want you to work solely in their techniques with their guides, their way, and then you honor that. And again, it's not, none of it is hierarchical or better than. It's just having an understanding of the energy that you're working with, the techniques you're using for that energy, and then, the structure of it may be the human part of the actual training for it. And some modalities, really want you to stay within their exact modality. Again, it's
same with
all
same with the Reiki lineages.
same with the Reiki
Talked
link.
about that earlier. So
Yep, same thing.
So really, if you are wanting more training, let's say you came out of a Reiki 1 and 2 class, or you've been a Reiki master or, practitioner, even teacher for a long time, and you want more training using the Reiki energy, then, this is a class that does that. It is a class that, all those spiritual buzzwords that you hear, like, oh, there's something that's calling me to past life regression, right? We do a different style of past life work. It's a parallel idea of those things. We talked a lot about cord cutting, same thing. So if you hear those words and you might be confused by it, especially if you're new to spirituality or the healing arts, or you've heard them and there's something calling you to it, that is another place that these classes work with. If you want to go further in sessions, like I said, with more of that training, this is another place that you get that training. If you want a community, right? This is that. We're live online in Zoom especially after 1 year, but then especially after 3 years, we're close as a circle. Like we feel like we are friends with the people in our circles. Each cohort stays together, so we keep them at the same time and same day. So I'll talk about that in a second. More of that, like, here's the nitty gritty of what you need to know around it.
Yeah, I just
But
want to clarify that you're talking about the next step in 12 Heavens classes.
yeah, yeah. I would hope that people know that we're talking about those. We stay together for together as a cohort. So by the end of the 3 years, you've worked 4 years. If you take all 4 classes, you have worked with these people now in a really sacred way, which is a really beautiful piece of it. People become friends outside of these circles. They work together outside of these circles a lot of times. So you become close with them. Also, Colleen and I are there live. We share, we ask questions. We have a quarterly Q&A, which is more of like a group mentorship session. So that is a dedicated 3.5 hour space where we're not doing any of that structured teaching. We are just there to share, ask questions. And a lot of times people ask questions about stuff outside of just the exact month's modules training. Maybe something happened in a session you need to know more about. So it has evolved into more of this group mentorship aspect in that. So there is a level of that through these 3 to 4 years, depending on what you do. And people gain confidence in it. If you ask people that have come out of that third year of next step, that fourth year of 12, explore the 12 heavens, that you're a different person and your level of skill is different. And, I'm going to say the thing that is, we have a hard time with self-promotion. I know this 1 hour might deem otherwise, but we do have a hard time with this. I think so many people do. But I'm going to say the same thing that I uh, will maybe later cringe at when I'm overthinking what I said in this podcast or not. But honestly, like, this is a really unique training. And it combines a lot of years of our own training, our own skills. It combines so much of that energy work that we just allow to lead the way. It's a unique training and it's powerful, it's healing, and it just does take you to another level of your practice, whether that's personal, especially if it's professional. You take these skills into your own practice and however that means it guides you in your own life. And so I'm going to say one more thing that I'm going to probably cringe at later. Just do it. If you're on the fence, just do it. People say you should say those kinds of things, when you're in those business like circles. Just say those things. Like really though, I say that with sincerity, not just from a salesmanship perspective. I say that with sincerity of like, yes, of course this training isn't for everybody. And we say it all the time that we honor all the trainings and all of those kinds of things. But if you are on the fence of should I do this? You should. You're going to be a different person by the end of it. You really are. Especially if you kind of commit to it. Although we are relaxed teachers, there's not really homework. If you need to miss a module or something like that, like we have families, we get those kinds of things. If you need to come in late or leave early, like we're pretty relaxed about that kind of stuff. But if you commit to it, you will be a different person by the end of it. It's a beautiful practice. It's a beautiful training. It's led by energy, by spirit, all of those kinds of things, and heart led as well, because it really does come from our heart as much as it does our skill training and things like that. It comes from our heart. And so as far as like the practicalities of it, we're opening we're opening registration November. We thought it was going to be the 19th, but it might be like the 18th or the 20th. So we will definitely, I'll probably edit in something at the beginning of this episode to let you know exactly what date that is. But it's going to be like one of those dates where we will also be doing a free webinar about journey techniques. So Reiki journey techniques for us, but we're going to talk about how it relates to shamanic journey techniques, some of the differences, the commonalities, and then you'll get to experience a guided journey, which we do a lot of those, but it's going to come in with that lens of of how to actually do it. So that's going to give you a taste of what we do literally every single month for a year or 3 to 4 years, depending on how far you go in this journey. So that will be at the end of November, November 18th, 19th, or 20th, depending. And then registration is open until January 20th, I believe. So it's open for a while. We always do an early bird. So that's always the first like 3 to 4 weeks of registration where you get extra benefit if you do the early bird. We always have a discount for a pay in full option. We always have monthly payment options. So just know that you don't have to pay for everything up front. You can pay things monthly over the year. So that is super helpful as well. Like I said, our classes are always either Wednesdays or Thursdays. They're once a month and they are 3.5 hours. And so we keep the same day and same like time of day. So level one, for example, will be on a Thursday afternoon. So 1 p.m. to 4:30 p.m. Pacific time. Explore the 12 heavens will be Wednesday afternoons at 1 p.m. to 4:30 p.m. So, and like we keep those times over the next, amount of time. So level one next year, level two will be the same time, same day of the week, that kind of thing. So registration closes January 18th. I'm sorry, but that means that you have lots of time to go ahead and register. At the same time, we always like to let people know because it is a certain window. It's usually over the holidays, and so things can get like lost in translation. That you'll have from November to January 18th to register.
So I would also add, first of all, the classes are, if we weren't clear, they're a year long, so January through December every year. And you can take each level, and decide every year. Although we hope you go through all of the trainings. We think you'll really benefit from it. Also, if you can't make it live, you can do self-study through recordings. We've done a really nice job of providing the recordings for the training as well. And quite a few people actually do self-study that way. But you can do a combination of both. So, whatever ends up working for you. Also, I would add, if you want to get more of a flavor for it between the webinar, go to our YouTube channel and check out, and podcast channel, and check out our series that we put in every Thursday. And so if you can't be at the Distance Reiki Shares live, then check out the recordings of them. We also have started to write blogs about all of these subjects, and we do send emails out to let you know. So those blogs are actually sent out every Wednesday, and they are really pretty deep about each subject, and go into that next level of training. We have articles on our website. We have free ceremony, like information. We have free downloads on it. We have a lot of free resources. So go to our website and scout around the ReikiLifestyle.com, and you can go to like the Next Step and 12 Heavens classes are under Reiki Lifestyle Academy. The Reiki 1 and 2 through Karuna, those are all under Reiki classes. The Animal Reiki under Reiki classes. And then we have a resource tab that has all these different information, links to our podcast, YouTube, the conversation blogs, Reiki conversation blogs, our articles from Reiki News Magazine, our ceremony information. Any of you that have seen the gratitude ceremony, we have that. And then, oh, and we'll be having a gratitude ceremony too,
Yep.
in November, and a burning bowl ceremony in December.
Mhm.
So much. It's like, oh, this wasn't enough time to tell everybody everything.
It's true.
So anyway, like Robin said, it's not just to do sales, it's because we want you guys to be able to hear a full kind of discussion about why we do what we do, how it will help you, how it teaches you some of the things you want to know, and how then it brings it into your daily life. Because ultimately, that's what it's all about. How does it benefit you, and how is it useful? We're actually very practical people, so it's we call it applied spirituality. So, all right. Well, I think we better finish.
Wrap it up. Yeah. Thank you so much, everybody. Thanks for listening. Like I said, this part of it for us is we're a heart-centered, heart-led business, and many of you can relate to it. That sometimes this is the harder part for us with it all. So thank you for listening. And I agree, Colleen, that it's also good to have the time and the space to actually kind of like get our words out about it. Because sometimes when you just say we've got this coming up, it's not enough time. That's just a sound bite. So it's good to be able to get our words out about it in long form. Of course, everything is at reikilifestyle.com. And then also email us if you're needing some questions answered. If you are, on the fence, or email us, please. It's Colleen at Reiki Lifestyle or Robyn at reikilifestyle.com. And we're always happy to answer any of your questions
Well,
around
we
it.
have free consultations with Danny now.
Yeah, that's true too. And
That's
Danny
right.
has a free 15-minute consultation, and you can find that at reikilifestyle.com too.
Under contact.
Yeah.
And you can schedule a free consultation with her about any of it. It doesn't have to be about this. It can be about any Reiki questions you have. Danny is fabulous. So she's doing all of those with us.
Awesome. All right. Thank you so much, everybody, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thank you.